Erev Tov Chavrim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live, and we are definitely seeing the beginning of what could turn out to be an explosive region there in the Middle East there with Syria. An explosion that could go far beyond the borders of Syria, even into Iran. And of course, if Iran gets into this war as well, it could involve the United States, it could involve Russia, it could involve a direct conflict between Russia and the United States, and even could spill over into the European Union. That may sound a bit far-fetched, but let me kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at that is really disturbing in the news that is coming out today. Right now, TASS, Russian news agency, has said that Syria's air defenses are on the highest alert in case of a sudden strike by the U.S., and of course, it has been stated for the last several days, Russia, Syria, both claiming that there is evidence that the U.S.-backed White Helmets and the jihadists in that region are planning a chemical weapons attack on Idlib, on the province of Idlib. And in fact, the very region that they're talking about this happening at is right here in Jussa el-Shakhur, which ironically happens to be very close to the border of Turkey. Now, I'm still blown away why Turkey or Russia and the Syrian government and Iranians are even willing to meet with the Turkish government, because after all, it is very obvious that the Turkish government is supporting the jihadists that the Assad government has to fight against. One reason why the war has been kind of delayed as Russia tries to hammer out an agreement with the Turks. Same thing that the Russians had to do with the U.S. and Israel and Jordanians on the border down in the southern part of the country as they ironed out their differences there. Well, the last stronghold of Idlib, as you can see to the far right of your screen, which is right here on the screen there, kind of center that up there. That's the Idlib city there that is under jihadist control. And of course, they're down in this area here planning on this possible attack. And that's also confirmed by this particular Syrian Al-Mayadeen website there, saying that in fact that they are planning this attack, and that at this particular prison that is there, it is known for the stockpiles of chemical weapons. In the article, they're stating that the White Helmets will have up to 200 of its own people involved in the filming and documenting of this attack there that will be done on the civilian population there in that little province, something they can control very well because they are, as I pointed out, very close to the Turkish border. Now, Russia may not like that, but that's just the hardcore facts. Now, here comes the second issue. This could really spiral things out of control. The Times of Israel is reporting today that the Iranian government and President Bashar al-Assad have signed today on Monday, August the 27th, 2018, the agreement for further military cooperation and the rebuilding of the Syrian military after the war is completed. And that's very troubling indeed, because that pretty much tells you Israel's lines are being crossed. Israel did not want Iranian influence inside the country. And what's that going to do? It's going to place a bullseye right on President Bashar al-Assad by the Israeli government. And in fact, that would be one thing that if the U.S. government, if they use a false flag chemical attack to launch their attack, they may allow Israel to be the ones to take out President Bashar al-Assad. After all, Israel has threatened to kill Assad in the past, and it would only seem about normal from a biblical perspective that Assad may very well end up dying in this battle, because if we remember, Elisha the prophet went to Damascus, and of course Ben-Hadad at the time, who was the king of Syria, had fallen ill. Well, according to Elisha, he would have recovered had it not been for a very sinister plot against his own life by his own jihadists inside of his government. So I have a feeling that someone in the Assad government will give away Assad's location, and his death will be caused by that very intelligence that will come out of this. Now we move on as well. We have other issues that are happening here too in the Middle East. Angela Merkel says to Trump that Russia is needed to restrain Syria's Assad from attacking Idlib. They're making it look like the Idlib province is some peaceful little place there. Well, after all the poor women that are living in this region here are prisoners inside of their own clothes. Yeah, it's kind of like the jihad that comes down, covers the complete face, and, like prison bars across the frontage. And I can tell you something, I am not against Muslim women's wearing a jihad at all. But in the case like this, it is obvious that it is not the will of all these women to be doing this type of lifestyle. And men who clearly are dominant and tyrants over these women. In fact, this is what Syria will get when Assad is killed and they overtake this country. They will turn it into the most unbelievable, unfree communist type of regime of Sharia law in the Middle East. The democracy of Syria, which has been for years, decades now, will collapse at the fall of President Bashar al-Assad. And we will no longer see the freedom of women there, but the oppression of women. It's kind of funny because Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu often talks about how that the women are oppressed inside of Iran. Well, think about it though. Israeli government, the U.S. government, the British government, the European governments, they have all been backing the jihadists that are the most radical of all the jihadists that will oppress women. So you're going to get what you want after all anyway. And I guess it just makes it easier to control the people, I suppose. Sputnik is also reporting that the U.S. has got its own destroyer there in the Gulf that has the ability with cruise missiles to reach any area in Syria. And of course, as another big issue that is going on as well, is the fact that the Iranian government also is claiming that they have full control of the the Strait of Hormuz as well as the Persian Gulf, and have no need of outside influence by foreign agents, i.e. the United States of America. The U.S. has always maintained control of the area because they said a third of the world's oil supply flows through the Straits of Hormuz, and they feel like that it is justified to keep that control there so that the oil flows freely out of this port. But now Iran is claiming that they are able to control it and the U.S. should be moved out of the region. Again, another provocative move that no doubt will help escalate the war against Iran. Can I help to wonder, though, if Iran is not doing these things intentionally to bring about the provocation? Do they really believe that while Russia is there protecting Syria, that Russia will have Iran's back in the event of a regional explosion? Well, who knows? Nonetheless, one thing's for sure, Israel will pay one of the heaviest prices, especially the Israeli civilian population. And of course, that regional move that Trump has talked about doing in Israel and his peace plan supposedly coming out on the 25th of September, one thing's for sure, a global war, especially a regional war, could reshape the very population of Israel if Israel is attacked as a result of retaliation by Iran. Not to say that Iran would win, but after all, those that will pay will be, as always in war, the civilians, the innocent, the children, the women, and the aged. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. Thank you for watching this evening. Check out IsraeliNewsLive.org. We've been trying to stay writing there a little bit more regularly now. I know my wife wrote another article this evening about the use of chemical weapons in the Middle East there, trying to keep you guys more up to date about things that are going on in the Middle East. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. Check out patreon.com/Israeli News Live as well. We shared a new message on there earlier this morning, as well as the Noon Institute. An amazing insight, I think, that will be a blessing to many. Shalom, shalom, and Erev Tov.